Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. So today we're diving into, you sent over some really interesting research on how the world of container handling is changing, and it all has to do with this company called Kalmar. So it seems like this whole industry, the backbone of how all the stuff we buy gets moved around the world, is going through a kind of revolution,
Mm.
all thanks to this new business model that puts performance first.
Yeah, it's not just about those massive ships and the towering cranes that we see at ports, although those are definitely impressive in their own right. But it's really about this huge global industry worth billions of dollars that's under pressure to become more efficient, sustainable, and adaptable to all these new challenges.
Yeah, I was actually really surprised to learn that this industry is already worth over $8 billion, like 8 billion with a B. And the
Yeah,
projections say it could hit like 11.2 billion by 2032. That's a lot of growth.
it is.
And I'm guessing it's not just happening by chance.
No, absolutely not. There's some really
Yeah.
powerful forces that are driving this growth,
Yeah.
and they all kind of tie back to this need for change. For instance, you've got the whole sustainability movement pushing for greener solutions like across the board.
Hmm.
Shipping is a major contributor to emissions, so ports are under a lot of pressure to clean up their act.
Yeah, that makes sense. Plus, I know online shopping is just exploding these days, and everyone expects their packages to arrive like yesterday. So there's this massive demand for faster and cheaper logistics.
You've hit the nail on the head. Container handling is all about speed and efficiency at the end of the day. And then there's the labor side of things too. Automating ports can dramatically reduce the need for manual labor, which can be really expensive and sometimes dangerous.
Yeah, I read somewhere that automated ports could cut labor needs by like up to 50%.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a huge change. And I can definitely see how it would make a big difference to the bottom line. But all this fancy tech, it must come with a pretty hefty price tag.
Oh, it does.
Right.
Traditionally, ports had to shell out a fortune to buy all of their own equipment. All those giant cranes, forklifts, and all the other heavy hitters you see at a port. We're talking hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars per unit. Plus, you've got ongoing maintenance costs, which can really add up over time.
I can only imagine. I bet even the tires for those cranes cost a small fortune. But that's where this new model comes in, right? The Kumar study that you mentioned, they called it performance-based contracting.
Exactly. This model is turning the traditional approach on its head. Instead of owning all of the equipment, ports are starting to partner with companies that can guarantee specific outcomes.
So instead of buying all the cranes and hiring a huge staff, a port could just hire a company and say, hey, we need you to move 10,000 containers a day. Can you handle it?
Precisely. And the payment is tied directly to hitting those performance targets. If they exceed expectations, they get rewarded. If they fall short, there are penalties built in. It creates a powerful incentive to deliver really top-notch performance.
That's an interesting approach. It really shifts the focus from simply providing the equipment to actually achieving results.
And it addresses a lot of the challenges that ports are facing today, from cost pressures and environmental concerns to the need for greater efficiency and adaptability.
Yeah, makes sense. But how do they actually track all of this? I'm picturing mountains of paperwork and people running around with clipboards.
Not quite. That's where the magic of technology comes in. These days, cranes, trucks, even the containers themselves are outfitted with sensors and IoT devices. It's like giving the entire port a digital nervous system.
Wow, so they can track everything in real time.
They can.
That's incredible. What kind of data are we talking about here?
We're talking about everything from the location of each container to the performance of every piece of equipment. They can even detect potential collisions and take steps to prevent accidents before they even happen. And then you've got RFID tags on each container, so there's no more guessing where things are.
So no more lost containers in a sea of metal boxes. That sounds like a logistical dream come true. But all of this data,
It is.
it must be overwhelming. How do they make sense of it all?
That's where the Terminal Operating System, or TOS, comes in. It's basically like an air traffic control system for the port. Taking in all this data and making sure everything runs smoothly, it helps manage the flow of containers, optimize equipment usage, and coordinate all the different operations that are happening at the port.
I can only imagine the complexity of trying to manage something like that. It sounds like you need a super organized brain to make it all work.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Implementing a system like this requires a really carefully planned strategy. There needs to be a thorough assessment to make sure that the port is ready for this kind of technological leap.
It's like laying the groundwork before you build a skyscraper. You
Exactly.
need to make sure that the foundation is solid.
That's a great analogy. And it's not just about the technology itself. There are operational aspects to consider, like training staff to use the new systems and adapting processes to this new way of working.
Right. It sounds like a lot of moving parts. And I'm guessing there are some risks involved as well. What if there are unforeseen financial challenges, operational hiccups, or even legal issues?
Of course, no major change comes without its share of risks, and we'll delve into those in just a moment.
Right, because even with the best laid plans, things don't always go perfectly.
Yeah.
Especially when you're dealing with something as complex as a global port.
Exactly. But companies like Calmar, the one behind this research, they're putting a lot of effort into minimizing those risks. They use sophisticated financial models and risk assessments to anticipate potential financial hurdles. They're also big on operational risk planning, which includes things like predictive maintenance to try and prevent equipment breakdowns before they even happen. And they have these really robust compliance systems in place to help navigate the complex legal landscape, which can be a minefield of potential penalties if you're not careful.
Yeah. Nobody wants to get hit with a multi-million-dollar fine because they missed some obscure regulation. But with all this focus on tech and efficiency, it's kind of easy to forget about the human side of things. I mean, I'm imagining there might be some pushback when you start automating jobs that were traditionally done by people.
You're absolutely right. Whenever you introduce major changes, especially ones that involve technology and potential job displacement, you have to be very mindful of the human element.
So how do you get everyone on board with such a radical shift? How do you convince people that this is a good thing, not just for the port's bottom line, but for the workers themselves?
It all comes down to communication, collaboration, and a commitment to supporting everyone through the transition. You have to clearly articulate the benefits of this new system, not just in terms of efficiency, but also in terms of safety, job satisfaction, and career development.
Right, because if you can show people that this technology can actually make their jobs better and safer, that's a huge win.
Absolutely. And training is key. You need to equip everyone with the skills they need to succeed in this new environment, whether that's learning how to operate the automated systems, analyze the data, or manage the new workflows. And you can't just train people once and expect them to be experts. It needs to be an ongoing process with opportunities for continuous learning and development.
It sounds like a pretty big cultural shift moving from a traditional way of doing things to this more tech-driven, outcome-focused approach. But how do you actually measure the success of this new model? Is it all about the bottom line, or are there other factors to consider?
Well, financial performance is certainly one way to measure success, but it's not the whole story. The real beauty of this model is that it creates a win-win scenario for everyone involved.
So it's not just about making the port more profitable.
Right. Think about it. The port gets its containers moved quickly and efficiently. The contractor makes a good profit by optimizing their operations. And ultimately, consumers like you and me benefit from smoother global trade. It's a virtuous cycle.
I like that. Everyone wins. But what about the more tangible benefits? Are there ways to actually measure how much more efficient these ports are becoming?
Absolutely. For example, terminals using performance-based contracting are seeing efficiency gains of 25% or more.
Wow, 25%. That's a pretty impressive number. But what does that actually look like in practice? What are some of the specific improvements they're seeing?
For one thing, container dwell time is significantly reduced. That means containers spend less time sitting around at the port, which frees up space and keeps things moving smoothly. You also see better utilization of equipment, meaning those expensive cranes and trucks are working at peak efficiency, not sitting idle.
So they're squeezing more productivity out of every piece of equipment. That's got to have a positive impact on the bottom line.
Exactly. And let's not forget about the environmental benefits. When operations are more efficient, you're using less fuel, generating fewer emissions, and ultimately reducing your environmental footprint.
It sounds like this performance-based contract model is a real game changer for the container handling industry. And from what you're saying, it seems like it's here to stay.
It absolutely is. It's revolutionizing the way ports operate, setting a new standard for efficiency, sustainability, and profitability. And it's not just about the immediate benefits. As this model continues to evolve and technology advances, we can expect even more incredible innovations in this sector.
That's exciting. It makes me wonder what the future holds for container handling. Will we see fully automated ports where robots do all the work?
That's a fascinating question, and it's certainly within the realm of possibility. But even with all the advances in automation, I believe the human element will always be essential. It's about finding the right balance between human expertise and technological capabilities, creating a system where they work together seamlessly.
It's like a high-tech dance between humans and machines, each playing their part. To orchestrate this intricate global ballet of goods and services,
I love that analogy. And just like any good dance, it requires constant communication, collaboration, and adaptation to keep things flowing smoothly.
well said. So for our listeners who've been following along with us on this deep dive, let's recap what we've learned about this new approach to container handling.
Absolutely. First and foremost, this performance-based contracting model is a fundamental shift away from the traditional model of equipment ownership. It's about focusing on outcomes, not just inputs.
Right. It's about saying, we don't just want to buy a bunch of fancy equipment, we want results. We want to move these containers quickly, efficiently, and sustainably.
Exactly. And this shift is driven by a confluence of factors, including the need for greater efficiency, cost savings, and environmental sustainability.
Plus, there's that ever-increasing demand for faster and cheaper shipping as online shopping continues to dominate the retail landscape.
You got it. And let's not forget the role of technology. Sensors, IoT devices, RFID tags, and sophisticated software are all playing a vital role in making this new model possible. It's the backbone of this whole system, allowing for real-time tracking, performance monitoring, and seamless coordination of these complex operations.
Technology is definitely the unsung hero here, working quietly behind the scenes to make all this magic happen. But it's not just about machines, is it? We've also talked about the importance of the human element, especially when it comes to managing training workers and ensuring that everyone feels supported and empowered in this new environment.
Absolutely. You can't just throw technology at a problem and expect it to solve itself. You need buy-in from everyone involved, clear communication, and a commitment to continuous improvement.
It's about creating a culture of collaboration where humans and technology work together to achieve shared goals.
Precisely. And finally, it's important to acknowledge that while there are always risks involved in any major change, companies like Kalmar are actively developing strategies to mitigate those risks. From financial modeling and operational risk planning to robust compliance systems, they're working to ensure that this transition is as smooth and successful as possible.
So it sounds like this new model is a bit like a high-tech dance. You need the right moves, the right technology, and the right partners to make it work. But when it all comes together, the results can be truly remarkable with benefits for everyone involved.
It's a beautiful analogy. And as we've seen the results speak for themselves, terminals are seeing significant efficiency gains, reduced costs, and improved overall performance.
And this is just the beginning. I'm really curious to see where this technology takes us in the future.
Me too. But before we get carried away with futuristic visions, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought. We've seen how this performance-based model is transforming the container handling industry. But what other industries could benefit from a similar outcome-focused approach? Where else could we see this kind of innovation and efficiency take hold? It's something to ponder, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Food for thought indeed. And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the world of performance-based contracting in container handling. We hope you found it as fascinating as we did.
It's been a pleasure diving into this topic with you.
And a huge thanks to you, our listeners, for joining us on this journey. Until next time, keep those minds curious.
Yeah, it really makes you think outside the box, doesn't it? We've been so focused on shipping containers.
Yeah.
But these principles could apply to so many other fields.
Exactly. Think about healthcare, for instance. What if hospitals were paid based on how quickly patients recover? Or how well they manage chronic conditions instead of just the number of procedures they perform? That's a really interesting idea. It would totally change the incentives, putting the focus on preventative care and overall well-being, rather than just treating symptoms.
Right. It would encourage hospitals to invest in things like patient education, follow-up care, and community outreach programs, all of which can contribute to better health outcomes.
It would be like shifting from a fix-it mentality to a prevent-it mentality, and it could potentially save a ton of money in the long run, too.
Exactly. Or think about education. What if schools received funding based on how well their students learn and develop essential skills, rather than just attendance rates?
That would be a huge shift. It would incentivize schools to create more personalized learning experiences, focusing on individual needs and talents, rather than just teaching to a standardized test.
It could also encourage a greater emphasis on practical skills and real-world applications of knowledge, preparing students for success in the modern workforce.
Wow, the possibilities are endless. It's like this whole idea of performance-based models is opening up a new way of thinking about how we structure and incentivize systems across all sorts of industries.
And that's one of the most exciting things about this shift. It's not just about improving efficiency in one particular sector. It's about challenging the status quo and finding new ways to create value, deliver results, and ultimately improve people's lives.
It's like a ripple effect of innovation spreading outwards from these massive ports to touch all aspects of our world.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe someday we'll even see performance-based contracts for podcast hosts. We'll get paid based on how many aha moments we deliver to our listeners.
I like the way you think. But on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive. We hope you've enjoyed exploring the fascinating world of performance-based contracting in container handling, and maybe even sparked some ideas about how this innovative approach could be applied in other areas.
It's been a pleasure diving into this topic with you.
And a huge thanks to you, our listeners, for joining us on this journey. Until next time, keep those minds curious.